welcome to Now You Know. This is our first show of 2020. Boy, it's hard to believe, isn't it? And we're going to start off the year with a bang, I think, as we have an excellent guest here this morning. And I would say we have a co-host here this morning, Madison Town Manager Tim Curtis, who has hosted this show a number of times over the years. And Tim, as town manager, has a pretty solid knowledge of what's going on with Josh Henry, who is our guest this morning. Josh Henry from Go Labs in Belfast, Maine, and Josh's company has purchased the former Madison Paper Company mill. Just closed this past late summer, right, on that. And so, how did this all come about, Josh?
I would interject that, really we should start saying Go Lab from Madison, Maine.
Yeah.
But it did start in Belfast, Maine. My background is that I'm a materials chemist. I was a professor at the University of Maine when we started looking at this suite of insulation products that we're going to be producing in Madison. My business partner, Matt Amalia, is an architect. He started a company about 10 years ago called Go Logic, now Opal. Design construction. They built the first what's called certified passive house in Maine. That was the 12th in the country at the time. And that was in 2008, at that great time for the design building construction market.
Yeah.
But that market has grown substantially, and we've grown as a company. And the challenge for us is we're producing, we're building buildings to way above code construction, and we're looking for advantages, new materials for what we see as coming for all construction types in the U.S., which is higher levels of code for energy efficiency and things like that. And really the market in insulation is dominated by two products, foam and fiberglass.
Mm-hmm.
And those are products that have a lot of liabilities. They, to manufacture, require a lot of the two things that insulation is designed to conserve, energy and fossil fuels. And insulation's just not a very complex material. And so we were looking for a more ecologically sound material that had the same performance characteristics and could be cost competitive. Yeah. And we found it in this product that's produced in Europe. It's been around for 20 years in Europe, so it has a track record. It does about 600 million euros a year in business. What was really curious to us and sort of motivated us and got me to quit my job at the University of Maine was that it's not produced anywhere in the U.S. And sort of the timeline was very fortunate for us, not fortunate for Madison, which is the decline of paper in Maine, left an opportunity for someone to do something different with the wood resources that we have in Maine. Yeah. And for us, it was really important to step up and try and do that because we felt like we had a viable product, but also we felt like it was really important for a Maine company to step forward and try and make that happen. Because, as you guys have experienced, paper is great and it's been great to the town of Madison for a long time, but, I think that when it comes to the forest products industry in Maine, the real backbone strength is the dimensional lumber mills, the LaFontaines, the Robbins family, Pleasant River, the Carriers. They really, they live here. They live the forest products industry. And when it comes to these like higher level investments, I think we need to start making them as a community, as people who really care about Maine and want to be in Maine and want to bring all of that, the paper companies, without their executive team here and without their development teams here, a lot of that money is going out of the state, and it doesn't have to, we don't think. So.
The forest products industry was looking pretty sad back in 2016 when Madison Paper Company went out of business. But all of a sudden here in the last couple of years, between what you're doing and product inventiveness and actually getting out of the making paper for, say, the New York Times and going into packaging and so forth. I know Sappi and Skowhegan has done that with a great deal of success. So all of a sudden, people are starting to figure it out now as to a new direction to go in. But you're taking it into a completely new direction from what's happened
Yeah.
here in Maine, and it's amazing. Now this has been going on for at least 20 years in Europe.
Mhm.
Why did it take so long for somebody to figure that out over here?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Just addressing your first comment, I would say that we have a tremendously valuable resource here in Maine, and we need to recognize that and um, not just be happy when someone comes and takes advantage of it, but find materials, find things to produce that really are the greatest advantage to the state of Maine.
Yeah.
And our product in particular, I think what took so long is, first I mentioned 2008. That was a huge disruption to the whole construction market and just set investment back, I think, so far. It just has taken even the mills that were running for, say, a product like oriented strand board, like OSB, like LP produces or Huber produces, for them to get back to investing and
Yeah,
think
makes
about
sense.
new products. It's taken this long, I would say.
Yeah.
So we know that a lot of those big companies have thought about this product, have studied it, are interested in it, and that was motivating for us. Actually, is to be like, look, we're ready now, and fortunately, we were correct in that sort of guess that if we showed some leadership and we stepped forward and put took a risk that would pay off, and I think you're seeing that now. I mean, none of the buildings are even that exist are even close, and our process is just a perfect fit for that. I would say that what came after that was the best surprise, though, was the support that we've gotten from the UPM staff, the people who were there.
Mm-hmm.
We've hired 4 people who were on the UPM staff before, as we're in this planning stages, who have over 100 years combined experience.
Yeah.
And they've been, the building is a value, but without that knowledge of the building and how to operate it, it really, we didn't recognize it at the time, but we needed that support and we got it. And that's been very gratifying.
The history goes back to 2014, 2015 when the super calendar paper was going down and the valuation of the mill was going down, and so taxes had to go up, and we knew it was going to be a very difficult next few years. And sure enough, in March we got notice that they were going to close. UPM closed the doors, and the fact of the matter is it was a highly efficient, well-run mill that was still somewhat profitable, but because the demand for super calendar paper was going down, UPM had to take one of their mills off the grid, off the market, and they chose the one in Madison to do that. So that kind of lends to the modernization of the facility, the fact that it has been well taken care of. It was built to house that paper machine in 1980, and for some that sounds like a long time ago, but for a mill that's really not that old. And when Milikowski built it, they put $300 million into that site. That would be almost $1 billion in today's market.
Yeah.
So that facility we knew was not going to stay empty for long, but after the closure, and I started to go to a lot of these forestry Maine think tank meetings where representatives from other mill towns were there talking about the options, talking about what's available out there. And it was frustrating for the first couple of years because when the Madison paper mill sold, they essentially liquidated it.
Right.
And they sold off the hydroelectric assets to Eagle Creek, and then a liquidator, using the name Somerset Acquisitions, held the property that Go Labs eventually bought.
Yeah.
The liquidators, they really weren't interested in redeveloping that site. They weren't interested in the future of that site. They were interested in getting as much money as they could out of it as quickly as possible. So we were dealing with them as they were in the process of getting equipment sold and the paper machine sold. And when you sell a paper machine that's 2 stories tall and 1,000 feet long, and you have to take it apart one bolt at a time, that took a while. And so the timing actually came together where that paper machine finally got out in July of 2019, which allowed Go Labs to come in and close in the building in mid-August. But all during that time when we were talking with people that might want to come do something with this facility, there was never really a good fit. That is unique. When people from the state think of mill towns, they think of Millinocket and Lincoln and Madison and Jay and Rumford, and they have a tendency to think all those towns are the same and all those facilities are the same. No, they're not. Each one is unique to that town and what product they made. And we were a 1 paper machine building, not 5 like Sappy, not 10 like Rumford. We just had a one machine in there. And when you took that out, it was a unique space. So about 15 months ago, back in late 2018, when Josh and members of his team came to the town office and we started to talk about the possibilities of this, I could kind of see a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, because what they're talking about does fit in so many different ways. First of all, logistically and physically, their equipment fits in the hole that's left over by the paper machine.
Yeah.
And it's a Maine forest product.
Yeah.
And it's manufacturing jobs. And you made a good point, Josh, about communities that if they had a bad relationship with their paper mill over a long period of time, maybe they didn't want to be a manufacturing town again. So I think we can be clear. The town of Madison's not real happy with UPM and the decision they made. Mm-hmm. However, we're very happy for Madison Paper. We're very happy that Madison Paper provided great jobs and great benefits to our people for many years, generations really. So with that, I think we are still a manufacturing town that's really glad to have this opportunity.
Absolutely. Are you going to use all the space in there eventually?
Yeah, in the beginning we were thinking like, hey, this is such a massive building, and how do we properly utilize it, and is it possible? Is there a possibility for co-manufacturing? And as as things have evolved, it's really pretty clear we do need all that space, and there's possibility that we may end up eventually down the road, assuming the product's successful, that we actually have to invest some more in developing that space and new and building onto it as
Tim
well.
would not be opposed to that.
No, I'm sure. Well, no one's opposed to our success,
Right,
including
exactly.
ourselves.
That's right.
I think that it's just a really good point. Like all of these buildings are very unique, and it was just we walked in there, and one of our sort of good synergies that we have as a design business is we were able to take the equipment. We had the drawings of the equipment that we knew that we were going to put in there. All of the documentation on the building was excellent. So we were able to basically take those drawings from the building and just test fit it and say like, oh yeah, this is going to work. And the interesting thing Tim mentions, a lot of products may not have fit in there, but that's about all the insulation. What we're going to produce at full capacity is about all the insulation you would ever want to produce in that area, just because insulation has a limited distribution distance. You don't want to produce all the insulation in North America to access North America from Madison and distribute it to California. The concept here is really that we're producing it for the Northeast market. And I think that it's just a perfect location for this because we have pretty good access to 95 to go straight down to the larger markets of Connecticut, Boston, New York. And it's a softwood product. So really Maine is the center of softwood for New England and the Northeast. And then, a lot of the other products that you could think about are going to be competing with Canada, and Canada is so strong in terms of its ability to provide subsidies for forest products. But because distance matters so much in terms of the cost of this product, you really don't want to be any further away from the market that you're addressing than Maine. So it's just a great, it's great for Madison. It's great for us. We've been fortunate about a number of things along this process, and this is just one of those.
Now everything is timing, right? You were fortunate. Well, this German mill wasn't so fortunate, but it was fortunate that German mill was going out of business. You already had a relationship with them, so you were able to buy their equipment and bring it over here. Where are you in the process of that?
We've disassembled all of the equipment. It's sitting in a port in Bremen. If we shipped it now with the roads and everything, and in the spring the roads will be posted, we really need to wait. Basically, we're planning to ship it in April, May, so that it arrives here in the summer. We can just move it. It's coming into Searsport.
Okay. Yeah.
So it'll come right from basically where I drive every day. Unfortunately, when I was coming here to evaluate the building, I was seeing a lot of paper rolls coming from Madison, going out the Searsport route. We're going to be doing the exact opposite thing. So you'll be seeing a bunch of heavy equipment, moving that route from Searsport.
Fairly complicated setting that up, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. We've had a lot of great help. I mean, I think, I talk about it so much, but, one of the most important things that we did when we came here, I had someone contacted and sent me an email and said, hey, I worked at the mill for a long time. I think you should come and meet with me. And so I, went to have breakfast at a diner in town with Marty Troy, who was the electrical instrumentation chief at Madison for a long time. And, I didn't know who Marty was. And I basically, met with him, told him what we were doing, kind of the similar way that I talked to Tim about it, very casual. And he said, all right, I'll help you. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure. That's great. But, we needed their experience on our team. We've hired Marty, Joe Clark, Rick Vino. Rick is our project manager for this project, and he was the project manager at UPM. And yeah, there was a tremendous knowledge base in this town about that building, but also how to do big projects. And we didn't have that, And so in buying the building, I've said it to the governor, I've said it to Heather Johnson, I've said it to anyone who will listen in the state of Maine. When something like this happens, towns don't just lose, a tax base. They don't just lose a building. If the timing is not correct, if we had not stepped in, I'm not trying to give us more credit than we deserve, but if we had not stepped in at that time, the next step was the removal of all the electrical distribution equipment and things that. And then the town is left without, a lot of hope. I mean, I think you're left with a concrete, steel shell with no operating, we still have the lights, the electrical distribution equipment, the fire protection, a lot of valuable equipment and infrastructure is left in there. And, I'm not trying to bang on anyone at the state, but if there was a little more action at the time that this was happening, the ideal thing to do would have been to step in, which I think the state could have done. And, I don't know, but, a place like Madison could have purchased it and basically allowed the state to have more ownership of what happens next. And that's, it was fortunate in our case. I would say a lot of other towns across Maine, like, Millinocket, East Millinocket, Lincoln, whatever, have not been as fortunate in terms of being able to control their site. And what happens is that it's just left to, you have a lot of towns, I think, held hostage by all these companies seem to be from Long Island. I don't know what to say, but like a lot of companies in Long Island who don't care about what happens in Madison, Maine.
Not at all. Now, you mentioned, you've spoken with the governor and Heather Johnson from Economic Development. What might they do to help you? Or has there been an offer of help or great idea, Josh, we're behind you, but other than that, that's it?
No, I can't say enough. About Heather Johnson in particular. I think the world of her. I think she's extremely smart. She's been there in our corner, doing everything she possibly could do. We haven't had as much interaction with the governor. She's really busy. So she's not thinking about us all the time, but we have talked to her and she's very supportive of what we're doing. And I think she executes that through Heather Johnson and her team at the DECD.
Well, it probably doesn't hurt having Heather as a local person, and Heather has a pretty intimate knowledge because she was Somerset Economic Development Director before this. Yeah. So
she's still a Madison taxpayer, so she has a property.
Oh yes.
Over
I know that.
Like
I know that.
So.
Yep.
I just want to step in and say I don't care where she's from. She is a super smart lady, and the state of Maine is really, in a great hands with her. As the
but are there any sort of programs that they could do to help you?
I think there's a balance there in terms of state investment in a project. I think, we have to stand on our own in the private market, and we've done just fine with that. We've garnered $5 million in private investment so far.
Yeah.
And, we're very close to, completing the package that we need to bring the entire financing for it. The state can do a number of things, and they're doing it. State entities are not made to move quickly, the way that private businesses are, and I think that's just the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
But to the extent that they can bend and flex and help us, they've tried and they're doing stuff. We secured the building with loans from the SEDC, so Somerset Economic Development, and MRDA. So they helped us. They put in some good loan package together for a portion of the mill building. Yeah. So without their help, we couldn't have made that happen. So.
What other types of financing do you do on something like this? You say it's private. A lot of it's private.
Well, Tim could speak to a lot of the different things that are that towns are trying to do to try and attract investment. There's a lot of tools out there, things like new market that Madison specifically could be involved in, new market tax credits, opportunity zones. They're for us, we're focused on straight financing, bank financing, and a tax exempt bond package that we are organizing through companies like Goldman Sachs. Yeah. They put together a package for certain products that you're manufacturing. For this product happens to fall under solid waste recycling because we're using products from we're using leftover products from a sawmill manufacturing process, so we can access that bond market and pitch our product to that bond market, and that's a valuable tool. some of the things that have been hyped up, like opportunity zones, I think have been a little bit disappointing to us, and probably,
especially rural parts of the country, and rural Maine especially.
yeah.
I think my observation from watching the Department of Economic and Community Development and the state and the Finance Authority of Maine and FAME and all these other entities that are either solely operated by the state or kind of on the fringe of the forest product market, they've been able to kind of cobble together a combination of grants and loans that really, from what I observed, allowed you to turn the corner from, okay, I've had enough meetings where you do your pitch and they say, well, that's a great idea, Josh. Best of luck to you.
Yeah.
Now you actually had some people that put some skin in the game.
Yeah.
But that was just enough to get you around that corner and then really launch you into that private investment type of structure. That's what it takes, because you've been talking the full scale operations somewhere in the $50 million range. Yeah, and that's more than the state's going to sign on for, obviously.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as I was talking earlier, everything's a matter of timing. So it was fortuitous, I guess, that the German mill went out of business and you were able to buy the equipment from that. And then this building came up that fits your needs. But I'm assuming, let's say you get into this and this really is the next best thing to sliced bread,
Mm-hmm.
and things take off. What you want to get a ways ahead of the potential competition and get going, right? And it seems as though things are lining up pretty well for you that way.
Yeah. It's been very good. It's Tim has observed, maybe closer than he's wanted to, how difficult it really is. I mean, you can have a great idea, and ideas are valuable. I won't say that they aren't, but you have to have a certain level of commitment that I don't think that everyone, they may think that they want it, but even when we started this, I didn't know what I didn't know, and it was only through my excellent wife and her commitment, and and my partner and our sort of relationship and willingness to put ourselves out there to invest our own family's money and really hang ourselves out there.
So you got plenty of skin in the game, it sounds like.
Right. Years and plenty more dollars than I like to think about on a daily basis. So it's and I can tell you, I'm not a I'm not a wealthy man, so and don't come from a wealthy family, so it really has been as much as we can handle, and probably a little more than we should have taken on. But I'm gratified by where we're at and our position to go forward. So I think I feel really good about the future, and the next year is going to be great.
Well, take us through the upcoming steps of you got to get the equipment here first, and then how does it go after that?
Yeah, people will start to see some activity immediately. Actually, we are in contract, finalizing a contract to start with the first steps. You're going to see on the outside of the building is a little bit, I would say, beautifying. So some of those, like the SMI building, which was the specialty chemicals building, that was never going to be revived. I don't even know if we've got the demo permit from the town of Madison yet, but we will soon, to demolish that building. Actually, the old boiler house that was original to I think the 1920s building, and contained the boilers that ran the new building. That is actually, because the mismatch in size between paper and what we're doing, we're going to be putting a new boiler into the building proper. And we need the room for wood chip handling in the yard. That building will be coming down, so you'll be seeing a very clean site. That demolition will be a project over 3 months, so it'll probably be February, March, April. That sort of coincides very well with the timing of the equipment arriving, and starting to do work on the interior of the building. We have been working just lightly inside, doing some scrapping on, just actually I have to give credit to Somerset Acquisitions. They hired a good crew to take the paper machine out and left although there was a lot of hanging pipe and things like that, they didn't just, I've seen other sites where they just basically,
Destroyed it.
just destroyed it.
Yeah.
Just basically hooked up a winch to the wall and just pulled everything off the wall. Just destroyed everything. And they did not do that. They were very respectful of the site, respectful of the systems in there that would have been necessary for a new manufacturer to take advantage of. And so we're just in there basically now, sort of planning a lot with our investment partners on what the layout's going to look like, and working on removing equipment, not equipment really, just like hanging pipe, and there are a lot of cut cables and stuff just to make the site safe again.
Okay.
So that is transpiring with a company out of Skowhegan that's doing that work.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's good. It's
Are you going to end up using a lot of local people, local contractors on the work here?
So for the demolition, we have a local contractor that is doing that, that's experienced in this, that built a part of that building. And I don't have a problem saying the name, but I don't know if I should at this point, so I'm not going to. But it's a company that people are very familiar with and is
Okay.
local to the area. And so, that in terms of that work, we'll be using a lot of local electricians, welders, all sorts of that stuff.
I always like to see that it has spin-off effects to the
I
local
mean,
community.
we need that. We're
Oh,
going to
yeah.
be hiring a huge, well, for us, what feels like a pretty huge workforce, and in installing the equipment is the first step in getting it manufacturing. And ideally, we would be hiring people who want to work at the mill ongoing as we install it, so they are familiar with the equipment, how it works, how it goes together. That's the plan anyway.
Now go ahead.
I was just going to point something out here, maybe bring in something that might save some of our folks that work at the town office. Because there is no HR for GoLab in Madison set up yet, we become the de facto HR, where people call the town office and say, well, where can I get my application to go work for GoLabs? And we have to try to explain the timeline, if you will, and it's a fluid timeline. I mean, it's just the nature of the business. But I'm assuming that once you get to that point where the equipment is installed and you're going to start doing your first round of hiring, there'll be information that we can help you disseminate
Sure.
and get that word out there. But I'll just say to the folks at home, don't come to the town office for your application.
Sorry. Yeah, we have someone who's managing our HR now, and she has started to put together we have a timeline for installation of the equipment and construction and all of that. And we're starting to map on top of that a HR timeline of who needs to be hired when. And that's a process that we're just getting going right now.
And you're doing this out of Belfast right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm here 2 or 3 days a week now, usually
Yeah.
in the old office building, brick office building
Yeah.
on site. But same goes for us. Where I just don't think it's valuable to be getting CVs and resumes right now, because for me, there's so much other stuff that we're handling until we're ready to see it. When I was in Augusta today giving a talk, someone brought a resume, and I love to see it because, I'm looking at these resumes and I'm like, wow, there's still, people ask us, is there enough talent? How are you going to get enough people? I mean, there are a lot of people that work there that love that mill and, have a lot of pride in that, the work that they did there, and are really rooting for us. And we're rooting for that. We're excited that they're excited because, we the hardest thing, what really makes the plant go is like the people who work there. And so, I'm not opposed to taking on those resumes and stuff like that, but you're just going to have to understand that it might take 2 or 3, coming back and saying, at various points and checking in with us and saying, where are you guys at and eventually we will say, okay, here's the date, here's where you send the email your resume, and we'll be, dealing with it on that sort of timeline.
Now, Madison Paper went out of business back in 2016. Are there many of those people still out there? I think some of them probably retired or got other jobs or whatever. Where's your labor pool coming
Well,
from?
that's always a good question for any
Yeah.
type of business growth in Maine, is where that labor pool is. The state workforce development team helped us with some of these numbers. You had 214 employees, counting management, at Madison Paper when they closed. And it almost breaks down to a third. Of those, about a third of them were eligible for early retirement, so they just took early retirement. The other third is working most likely for Sappi, Huhtamaki, some of those other manufacturing places. And the other third took the option to take on new licensing classes, and the state and the federal government were going to pay for a lot of these new training courses, and they were working in different fields. I have a feeling that some of those folks in those latter two categories are the ones that would be interested in coming back to Madison. Because when you go from your position in one paper mill that you've been there 20 years to the next paper mill, you're back down here on the bottom again.
Right.
So there
Right.
may be folks that might be looking to come back and see what the new opportunity is. We were really fortunate that Sappi was hiring when Madison Paper closed, because we didn't suffer the decline in population or the decline in the housing market that other mill towns did when they closed.
Yeah, and actually I noticed that, being, well, you know, my background in the real estate business, that I noticed that there really wasn't that much of a decline in terms of property values or
Yeah.
or anything around here, less than I would have anticipated.
So many people thought that, oh no, Madison's paper mill closed, we're going to be just like Millinocket. They're two different areas completely. You know, one is Madison's 20 minutes from the interstate. Millinocket is very far away from anything else. They were dependent on that huge facility there, and that was their town. That was their
Right.
economy.
Right.
And so when Madison Paper closed, there were the folks that said, "Oh, this is it. You know, we're gonna, all your revenue from excise tax is going to go down. People aren't going to buy new cars anymore. People are going to sell their houses for half of what they're worth." But none of that ever came to fruition. So
Fortunately.
very
yeah,
fortunate.
very.
Yes.
Yeah.
So 120 people maybe eventually. I'm assuming that gets ramped up gradually
Yeah.
as you introduce different products and over time. And,
Yeah.
so you'll be hopefully hiring some this fall then.
Yeah, it's probably, I would say it's a 50-50 mix of operations and executive sort of team, sales, marketing, all that kind of stuff. And probably, you know, we're introducing a new product to the building products market in the US, and so the mill won't be running initially like the paper mill was 24/7. So it's not an existing product and commodity product in the US. So we have to kind of test the market and see, you know, how that ramps up. The sort of modeling that we've done, we think that, you know, that's going to take 5 years probably in order to get to full production, so that you're running 24/7.
Yeah.
You know, that's probably, you know, the hardest thing about running a mill that is not running all the time is you need a certain kind of, and good news for the town is that you need a certain staff to just operate it. You know, it runs most efficiently when you have 3 shifts that you're, or
Right.
you know, however you're running all of your shifts, and so you know, our staffing will probably be more than, you know, around 50% of that, you know, right off the get-go, I would imagine.
50%.
Yeah, so, you know, pretty decent staff going right from the beginning.
Now your mill potentially has a lot of spin-off effects, both to the community and the area, in terms of people getting good paying jobs, and then spending money in restaurants and other places, and then you got to get the wood chips from somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So you got the mills doing that. I mean, there's potential for many $1 million of spin-off effects, right? Once you
Yeah,
get
I
up
mean,
and
I think
running.
that, like, what people don't realize about this product, you know, our biggest cost is transportation. You know, the effect that it's going to have on people, like, I probably shouldn't say this, but like the carriers who move with chips and product around, and shipping companies, it's going to be great for them. So there's going to be a lot of product moving in, because we're taking a dense wood chip product, and we're turning it into a very, you know, soft, you know, low density product, and that requires, you know, a good amount of shipping out of the site. So there's that. I hope that the effect that it really has, we talked about HR and hiring and stuff, is, you know, part of the motivation of doing this is I worked at the University of Maine and a lot of young people coming through there who want to stay in the state of Maine. And, I feel like and Matt, my partner as well, have a really good beat on what young people want to do with their lives. There are a lot of young people who are really, really concerned about the direction that the environment, the toll that we're taking on the environment, and they want jobs in that space. They want to feel like they're doing, good paying jobs. Everyone wants that, right? But a good paying job that they feel like they're making a meaningful difference in the world, like that's a that's a rare thing. It's a hard thing to come up with, and I'm really looking forward to not just the people who were invested in the wood products space before, but the impact that we're going to have on young people wanting to work in this industry. There's a huge amount of concern in the forest products industry about how do we attract young people to this. Well, I would point to Matt, my partner in his design construction business. If you walk in our office, Belfast is a town with an average, not probably unlike Madison, average age of like maybe 60 years old. And our office is 60 people, all under the age of like 35. And when you look in there, you just do a double take. It's so obvious, and you want to know why. Well, these are people coming from all parts of the country to work for us. Why? Because we're doing something that is meaningful to them, and having success at it. And that's I think that's what it's going to take. I think the forest products industry in Maine is a fantastic place to work. I think it's so meaningful towards the future of the environment, having this great resource, the Maine woods, and, the contribution that it makes, to a better, future for all of us. We have to maintain that by producing products that have value. Most of the lands in Maine that are productive are privately owned, and they're only going to stay as forests so long as those owners can sell that wood, and that's about producing higher value products and whatnot. So
I mean, what I read through the internet stuff on you, obviously the environment and your impact on the environment is a big part of what you're doing here. The environmental in terms of carbon emissions and things like. You want to talk about some of the environmental aspects of your new product?
Sure. Yeah, I think anyone who's familiar with construction, this is kind of what I'm showing you here is a mock-up of a wall section, a typical wall section for constructing a building. So you've got here it's a 2x4 construction, but 2x6, 2x8, an exterior sheathing. Here we've got zip sheathing or any OSB layer. On the exterior is an insulating board that we are going to produce. This is competitive with what you see is ubiquitous on a job site, like a pink and blue board foam insulation.
Sure. Yeah.
So this is a drop-in replacement for that. It has a number of properties that are better than foam. It has a little bit lower R value, but it's vapor permeable, so it's not like wrapping your house in plastic. It's like Gore-Tex compared to like a rubber rain jacket on your house. It's also got it's got compressive strength. It's a rugged material, so builders like it because, first of all, you can do anything to it. You can touch it. It feels great. It cuts the same way wood does, so you're it's a material that, like my partner says, like, it just feels like you've had access to this material all the time.
Yeah.
But it's been here, but it hasn't, And so when builders start working with it, they're like, oh, I can use that. I know exactly how to use this. Yeah. I know how to nail it up. There's not a lot of special considerations. I don't have a lot of concern because it's been around for 20 years. The bat product is a press fit into a stud cavity like you have for rock wool insulation.
Sure.
But, again, I'm using my hands. If you use fiberglass, if you use mineral wool, you're used to wearing like a Tyvek suit and a respirator.
We wouldn't be sitting here like this
exactly.
if you had the fiberglass.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you've got your, right underneath your drywall.
Yeah.
And I kind of lost track of what we were talking. But our sales pitch is really, a lot of green products. The pitch is do the right thing for the environment. what we're actually presenting is like, this is a better solution.
Yeah.
It's performance competitive or better. It has better soundproofing qualities than all the insulations on the market. And, you know, what made me quit my job was when we did the financial modeling and realized, hey, that we can produce this cost competitively with all the products out there. And that, you know, that is a game changer. You can offer something that is performance competitive, cost competitive, and I think people want to do environmentally, you know, health and safety, the best things for their family, for the environment.
Well, I think that's true. As long and you, since you brought it up, as long as it's cost competitive. If you're in there cost wise, then all of a sudden they can try to do the thing and say, well, geez, now I can do something good for the environment. But probably cost is a major factor, isn't it?
It is, totally. And I mean, I think contractors and builders out there will recognize something that I say here, though. You know, in the last couple of years, 10 years, mineral wool insulation has been a major, made major inroads into residential construction. You see it on back of trucks everywhere. These like shrink wrap tubes of rock wool that people are, you know, throwing into stud cavities. People love the press fit application. They like it so much they're paying 20 to 30% more than they paid for fiberglass, and you kind of scratch your head and you're like, why are they doing that? Well, when you look at the build of an entire house, like say you know let's just say $200,000 house you build, the amount of insulation that goes into that is a tiny fraction of the overall cost that you're bearing. Yeah. So why are people paying more for rock wool? Well, they like to use it better. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't really affect the bottom line of the overall house. So there is more flexibility in the insulation market, we believe, than just it has to be the lowest cost product, which is great for the town. It's great for us because, you know, you really don't want to get into, you know, that's what happened to Madison paper in some ways, is that you get into a commodity market, and when there's no, you know, we were talking, Rick and Marty and I were talking about this the other day. When they started out at the mill, they were getting a certain amount for super calendar paper, and over the years it just went down and down and down and down. Yeah. And that's what happens with commodity products. If you can stay out of a commodity market, you want to. Yeah. And so, you know, I think it's a balance. I think that, you know, I think the resources that we have in Maine, there's just a great story here. We can afford to pay a good price for wood, but, you know, so we have like a little bit of a buffer space. We're not so fixated on that, but at the same time, you know, like it just keeps everyone sort of fed. There's like a sort of cyclical nature there that, like, you know, the people who own the woodlands, the loggers, they get what they need. We get what we need. Everyone's producing.
And the fact that you can really do all of this right here in the state of Maine too. Everything comes from Maine. You're not going out of the area, out of the country to get. Everything's right here, right? Yeah.
Well, I think Mainers are very humble people, and they undersell their abilities. And, you know, it just, you know, one of the motivations for doing this is I just got mad. I was like, we can do this. You know, like this is something that we can actually do, and I'm a pretty stubborn person. So, you know, we wanted to show people that, like, this is our resource and we can do something positive with it for sure.
Now, so you're buying wood chips from mills in the area, and what's the process of taking them from wood chips to the fiber and material? Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually a fascinatingly simple process. You know, simple on some levels.
For a lot of chemistry professor.
not for us.
I can boil it down pretty simply. So you take a clean paper chip, you refine it, which amounts to cooking it under pressure. Like everyone has, or a lot of people have, an Instant Pot or like a pressure cooker in their kitchen. Imagine taking wood chips, cooking them in a pressure cooker for a short amount of time under high pressure steam, and then pushing it into a refiner, which, you know, if you're familiar with the paper industry, you're like a mill, basically. Okay. Where the mill gets its name is like two plates spinning against each other and producing out of that a fiber, you know, and the dimensions of the fiber have to do with the refiner and all that. When it comes out, it's just, you know, it's the same wood in a different sort of morphology, and then it gets shot into a dryer, which is basically like a big hair dryer, a really big hair dryer where you're you shoot it into a tube that's about 1.5 meters wide, and 60 meters later, it goes from 100% moisture content to 6% moisture content. And at that point is where, depending on the product that you're talking about, you're combining it with a glue, and then it's being laid out by the continuous manufacturing equipment to be, fluffed up, basically, so that it can enter a continuous press. And then depending on what you're producing, that, if it's the board, it's a high, a medium high pressure press. That is injecting steam and curing the glue. If it's the bat product, you're adding what's called a bicomponent fiber, and you're just cooking the mat, and the mat gets both of these products. Then in the end result, get cut up into boards or bats, and that's the end product. Basically.
So you've got the really three products, right? You got the loose fill, you got the bats, and then you've got the boards.
Yeah.
And so when you first open the mill, are you picking a particular product to start out with and then kind of evolve from there?
Yeah, it's convenience, and it's it's about cash flow, and it's about getting what can come first logistically, and the loose fill is the easiest thing, because as you can imagine, for the loose fill insulation, you're really producing the same fiber that you are for all these products, but instead of forming it into a mat and making boards and cutting it up, you are just stuffing it into a shrink wrap bag, kind of like a peat moss bag or a big topsoil container or something like those big Promex bags, and you're cubing it, you're palletizing it, wrapping it, and sending it to a lumber retailer, or to actually the process of the loose fill insulation, getting it to market is simpler as well, because there's a lot of people, contractors in the Boston area and so forth that are, if you're building a new house and you want to do loose fill insulation, they're coming with their machines, they're blowing insulation into the stud cavities. And this product, the loose fill, is just can be put right into those machines, just like fiberglass or cellulose can. Mm-hmm. So that product can be, up and producing by the end of this year, early next year. And that's just the, logistically getting it to market and also getting the equipment operating is that gives us sufficient time for that. And then the other products following close in the spring and summer of the next year.
Is there like some fire retardant that you add to the product?
Not to the board product, because interestingly, people always ask about wood, because they're, it makes sense, right? Because we all have wood burning stoves in Maine. We're like, we burn wood and wood burns. Yeah, right. But no one asks about foam, which is a plastic product. If you talk to I'd be interested, because I bet a bunch of your audience are firefighters. And when I have friends who are firefighters, and when they talk about this, they're like, thank God you're doing this, because how they're really endangering their lives now is really about the synthetic products that we have in our home. All the foams that you have in your couch and in your stud cavity and things like that, when they burn, people don't die from fires from burning to death. This is really grim, but they die from asphyxiation, from the cyanides that are produced from plastic products that we have throughout our home. And so that is the danger of having non-natural products. Like, it's not how fast a product burns, really. It's what it produces when it does burn. But, like, just so people understand, we have to meet all the same fire codes that any other insulation meets, right? Okay. So all of our products meet the code requirements, and so you don't need to be concerned about. I mean, we'll explain it to you, but you don't. Rockwool does this cool thing where you basically turn a blowtorch on it, and it doesn't burn. That doesn't really mean anything. I hate to tell people, because Rockwool inside your stud cavity, if you get to the point where the fire has reached the interior of your stud cavity,
It's
it's
gone.
over.
It's gone anyways.
It's
yeah.
over.
Yeah.
Like everything
Yeah.
is over.
Right.
You're down to absolutely nothing in your home. Like that's
Okay.
not the concern. But of course, you don't want a fire to start in the stud cavity or anything like that. So for the loose fill and the bat insulation, they're treated with a boric acid, which is standard for cellulose insulation, for example, which people use all the time, and meets code. And the board product is less flammable than foam, which people use all the time,
Okay.
and is actually comparable in sort of its fire flammability characteristics as OSB, which is the exterior sheathing of almost every house out there. So,
Okay.
that's kind of the short of it.
Yeah. Now, in terms of markets, are you at the point where you've lined up potential markets to sell this to, or is this too
I mean,
early?
it's really hard to sell a product that you're not going to have for people for a year.
Yeah.
So we have had those conversations, and there's a lot of interest out there. A lot of our investors are people who are in the building products space and have confidence that this is going to go. But in terms of actual contracts, that would be awesome. We probably wouldn't need investors at that point if we had like locked in contracts like paper companies have for their output. But that's part of the risky nature of these kind of things. But that's kind of, if you're introducing a new product at all, you don't there's no. It's very rare that there's like it's a commodity, otherwise, and we wouldn't be here talking to you or be able to like start this if there weren't some risk involved. But
sure.
I think we feel very comfortable with the risk. Well, I've learned to become very comfortable with the risk. I think that the investors that we now have on board, have a long history in building products and distribution of building products, and they have a sense for where things are going. I mean, interestingly, the board product, as hard as it is to import to the U.S. insulation, that product right now is doing $5 to $10 million of sales imported.
Okay.
So if you
Wow.
think about that, I mean, that's really a good portion of our offtake for just the board product, which is the harder product for people to envision how it's used in our building system. I think that there really is offtake there already. It's just a matter of as we get closer to production, we'll be able to line that up.
Excellent. Tim, you have any
Well,
final
I
questions?
just,
Comments?
I would bring it back around here to the, what's old is new again. You go back for 200 years, and agriculture and wood products have been what's driven Madison. And so now you come around and you've got a new product like this and a new manufacturing. Excuse me, I've lost my voice here. Coupled with, Backyard Farms is in their 11th year of mass production of an agricultural product. So what's old is new again in Madison. So it's really exciting, and we're poised to be in a good position, especially with the green economy and the products that are manufactured here and the processes and the way they're done. There's a good synergy between a lot of these businesses that are coming in, and so I'm excited. I think 2020 is going to be a very exciting year.
I think it's going to be very exciting too for Madison and for all of our area here as well. So Josh, we certainly wish you the best, and I'd like to extend an invitation to us, I guess, that we can come to your mill maybe this fall, where we can actually get inside and look around a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
And take the audience on a tour.
Yeah, I think that'd be great for sure. And we look for, it's been more challenging as of late with everything that's been going on to be open to like getting everyone in, but that's really how we've gotten here, is telling anyone who would listen our story, and we've gained a lot of support through that. and we're always open-minded to having people in. We want people to know what we're doing. We're not ashamed of it at all. We're really proud of what we're doing, and so we want to tell that story and continue telling that story. So.
Well, I think hopefully a few people will be watching the show, so this will get it out a little
Yeah.
bit to the
Yeah.
Skowhegan, Madison, and Anson areas, so they will know what's going on. So,
It's been a pleasure.
and I know there's a lot of excitement. Tim can tell us this. There's a lot of excitement within the community about
Yeah.
this. So this is fantastic.
Yeah, we feel it. Yeah. It's great.
So I would very much like to thank Josh Henry for being our guest today, and Tim Curtis is being, well, he's been a guest a number of times, a host a number of times, but good to have him back, of course. And like to thank all of you for watching, and now you know.